I stood in the attic of my childhood home, holding a faded photograph and a bundle of letters that had just shattered my entire existence. My hands trembled as I stared at the face of a stranger who shared my eyes, my smile, a man my mother had sworn died before I was born. "Emma? Are you still up there? We need to finish packing before the movers arrive tomorrow." My mother's voice echoed from downstairs, unaware that her careful house of lies was about to collapse. I tucked the evidence into my jacket pocket and descended the stairs slowly, each step bringing me closer to a confrontation 29 years in the making. My mother stood in the living room, her back to me as she wrapped picture frames in newspaper. This house, the only home I'd ever known in our small Massachusetts suburb, was being sold now that she was remarrying and moving to Florida with Douglas, her fiancé of 2 years. "Mom," I said quietly, my voice steadier than I expected. "Who is Michael Donovan?" The photo frame in her hand slipped and shattered on the hardwood floor. She didn't turn around immediately, and in that pause, that small hesitation, I had my first confirmation. "Where did you hear that name?" she finally asked, still not facing me. I pulled out the photograph. "I found these in a box behind the wall panel in the attic." Letters. Pictures. I swallowed hard. A birth certificate with his name on it. My birth certificate. She turned slowly, her face drained of color. The woman who had raised me alone, who had told me countless stories about my father, a young soldier named James Carroll who died heroically overseas before I was born, looked at me with fear in her eyes. "You weren't supposed to find those." "That's your response?" Not, "I'm sorry I've been lying to you your entire life." My voice cracked. "You told me my father was dead." "He might as well have been," she snapped, suddenly defensive. "He left us, Emma. He walked out when I told him I was pregnant. I protected you from knowing your father abandoned you." "No," I said, holding up one of the letters, dated when I was 3 years old. "He begged to see me. He sent child support checks you returned. He didn't abandon us, you kept me from him. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I cut her off. "You told me he was a war hero who loved me so much. You made me visit an empty grave every year on Father's Day. Meanwhile, this man, my real father, has been alive all this time, thinking I wanted nothing to do with him." My mother sank onto the couch, her composure crumbling. "It was complicated, Emma. Michael wasn't, he wasn't good for us. That wasn't your decision to make." I was shouting now, years of grief for a man who never existed pouring out. 29 years, Mom. 29 years of lies. "What are you going to do?" she whispered. I looked at the return address on the most recent letter, dated just 5 years ago. "I'm going to find my father." Her eyes widened. "Emma, please. And you're going to watch as I build the relationship you stole from both of us." I headed for the door, pausing only to add, "Don't follow me. Don't call. When I'm ready to talk to you again, I'll let you know." As I drove away from the only home I'd ever known, tears blurred my vision. I had built my identity around being the daughter of a hero, a man who never existed. Now I needed to discover who I really was, and who the man in the photograph might be to me now. In my apartment that night, I spread the letters across my dining table. Michael Donovan had written to me for years, on birthdays, holidays, milestones. His last letter, when I would have been 24, was addressed to my mother. "Catherine, it's been over 2 decades. I've respected your wishes all this time, but Emma is an adult now. Please, just tell her I exist. Tell her I never wanted to be absent from her life. If she chooses not to contact me after knowing the truth, I'll accept that. But she deserves to know she has a choice. She deserves to know she has a father who has loved her from afar all these years. A father who loved me. A father who was alive." A quick internet search revealed Michael Donovan was a professor of architecture at a university in Chicago, just a 2-hour flight away. I booked a ticket for the following day before I could lose my nerve. That night, I barely slept. I alternated between rage at my mother's deception and terror at meeting the stranger whose blood ran in my veins. By morning, I had made my decision. I wasn't just going to meet my father, I was going to get answers about why my mother had gone to such extreme lengths to keep us apart. The campus of Northwestern University was bustling with students when I arrived the next afternoon. I had learned that my father, it still felt strange to think of him that way, taught an advanced design class that ended at 3:30 p.m. As I approached the School of Architecture building, my heart hammered so loudly I was certain everyone around me could hear it. I waited outside his classroom, watching through the small window as a tall man with salt and pepper hair gestured animatedly at a projection screen. Even from a distance, I could see my own mannerisms in his movements, the way he used his hands when he spoke. The similarity was uncanny and unsettling. When students began filing out of the room, I remained frozen in place. Several gave me curious glances as they passed. When the last student left, I took a deep breath and walked in. He was gathering papers at his desk, his back to me. "Forget something?" he asked without looking up. "I hope not," I said quietly. "I think I've forgotten enough already." He turned, confusion crossing his face as he tried to place me among his students. Then, slowly, recognition dawned. His papers slipped from his hands, scattering across the floor. "Emma," he whispered, his voice barely audible. I nodded, unable to speak as emotion closed my throat. "How?" He stepped toward me, hesitated, then stopped. "How did you find me?" I pulled the bundle of letters from my bag. "I found these yesterday. In my mother's attic." He stared at the letters as though they were both precious and painful. "She never gave them to you." "No. She told me you were dead. A soldier named James Carroll." He closed his eyes briefly, absorbing this cruelty. When he opened them again, they shimmered with unshed tears. "I'm very much alive, as you can see." "Why?" I asked, the question that had consumed me. "Why would she do this?" Michael gestured to a chair. "Maybe we should sit?" For the next hour, sitting in that empty classroom, I listened as my father filled in the gaps of my history. He and my mother had been young, she was 22, he 24, when they met in Boston where he was completing his master's degree. Their relationship had been intense but volatile. When she told me she was pregnant, I was shocked, but I wanted to marry her, he explained. Catherine refused. She said she needed time to think. Then she disappeared, moved out of her apartment, changed her number. I spent months searching for her. After I was born, he had tracked her down through a mutual friend. She told me she'd found someone else, someone more stable who wanted to be your father. She returned every check I sent, refused every attempt I made to be part of your life. There was no one else, I said bitterly. She raised me alone. All these years, she maintained this elaborate lie about a dead war hero. I tried legal routes initially, he said, but without marriage, my parental rights were complicated. She threatened to disappear completely if I pushed. Eventually, I had to make peace with writing letters you'd probably never read, sending gifts you'd never know were from me. She kept those too, I said. There's a trunk in the attic. Pain flashed across his face. I never stopped thinking about you, Emma. Every year on your birthday, I would wonder how tall you were growing, what you were interested in, if you were happy. He hesitated. Are you? Happy? The question caught me off guard. Was I happy? I had a good job as a graphic designer, a nice apartment, friends. But there had always been something missing, a shadow over my life I couldn't name until now. I've been living someone else's story, I finally said. I need to figure out who I am without the lies. Michael nodded, understanding. I'd like to help with that, if you'll let me. We moved to a coffee shop near campus, where conversation flowed more easily. I learned he had never married, though he'd had serious relationships. None of them quite worked out, he admitted. Your mother left a mark. I told him about my life, college, my career, my love of sailing, which made him smile. I have a small sailboat on Lake Michigan, he said. I've sailed all my life. Another piece of myself clicked into place. My mother had always hated my sailing lessons, called them a waste of money. Now I understood why the water had always felt like home. As evening approached, Michael hesitated. I don't want to presume, but would you like to have dinner? There's a good Italian place nearby. Over pasta and wine, we continued learning each other. I discovered he played guitar, just like I did. He loved old noir films, hated eggplant, and doodled constantly on napkins and margins, all traits I recognized in myself. With each similarity, my anger at my mother intensified. What happens now? He asked as we walked back toward campus where my rental car was parked. I'm staying at a hotel nearby. I have a few days before I need to head back, I said. Maybe we could spend some time together? I'd like to get to know you better. The look of joy on his face made my heart ache for all the years we'd lost. I'd like nothing more. I can take time off, show you around Chicago. As we said goodnight, he hesitated, then asked, would it be all right if I hugged you? I nodded, and as his arms closed around me, the first embrace from my father I could remember, I felt something broken inside me begin to heal. Back at my hotel, I found 17 missed calls from my mother. I sent her a text, I'm with Michael. I'll contact you when I'm ready. Then I turned off my phone. The next 3 days were a crash course in discovering my father, and through him, parts of myself. We sailed on Lake Michigan, where I found we shared the same instinctive understanding of wind and water. He showed me his architectural designs, and I showed him my graphic work on my tablet. We talked until our voices grew hoarse, trying to compress 3 decades into mere days. On my last night in Chicago, as we walked along the lakefront, Michael asked the question we'd both been avoiding. What will you do about your mother? I watched the waves lapping against the shore. I'm not sure I can forgive her. I understand, he said carefully. But Catherine and I were both young, both stubborn. I made mistakes too. Did you make mistakes that justify erasing you from my life? Creating a fictional dead hero to replace you? My voice was sharp. He sighed. No. That was wrong. Unforgivably wrong. But people do terrible things out of fear, Emma. What was she afraid of? Losing you, maybe. Or sharing you. He paused. I think you need to ask her. I returned to Massachusetts with promises to visit again soon, my mind made up. It was time to confront my mother, not just about her lies, but about her fear. She was waiting at my apartment when I arrived, looking like she hadn't slept in days. She rushed toward me, but stopped when I held up my hand. Emma, please. I met him, I said flatly. I spent 4 days getting to know the father you stole from me. She flinched. I know you're angry. Angry doesn't begin to cover it. You invented a dead hero rather than let me know my real father. Do you understand what that did to me? Every Father's Day, leaving flowers at an empty grave. Telling other kids my dad died serving our country. All lies. I thought I was protecting you. From what? I demanded. From knowing I come from a man who plays guitar like I do? Who loves sailing and has the same laugh as me? Who kept writing to me for 25 years even though you made him believe I wanted nothing to do with him? She sank onto my couch, tears streaming down her face. You don't understand what it was like. I was 23, pregnant and terrified. Michael and I fought constantly. I convinced myself you'd be better off with a perfect memory than a flawed reality. That wasn't your decision to make. No, she admitted quietly. It wasn't. We talked late into the night, about her fear of sharing me, her worry that Michael would disappoint me as he had disappointed her, her eventual realization that the lie had grown too big to take back. When you were about 12, she confessed, I almost told you the truth. But by then, you had this image of your heroic father. How could I tell you he was just a man who sent birthday cards you never received? That I'd been lying to you your entire life? So you just kept lying. Yes, she whispered. And with each year, it got harder to stop. I took a deep breath. I'm going to have a relationship with my father. I'm going to get to know him, and you're going to have to accept that. I know, she said, wiping her tears. I've already called off the move to Florida. Douglas and I, we're taking some time apart. He doesn't understand why I did what I did either. None of us do, Mom. In the weeks that followed, I established boundaries with my mother while building bridges with my father. Michael flew to Massachusetts, and I watched as he and my mother saw each other for the first time in nearly 30 years. The tension was palpable, but civil. Catherine, he nodded stiffly. Michael, she replied, unable to meet his eyes. You look well. So do you. He hesitated. Despite everything, you raised an extraordinary daughter. I can see you in her strength. Something in my mother's posture changed, a releasing of breath she'd been holding for decades. She has your creativity. Your patience. I should have seen that sooner. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was acknowledgement. Recognition of the damage done and the long road ahead to repair it. Over the next several months, my relationship with my father deepened. I visited Chicago regularly, and he came to Massachusetts. We discovered more similarities, learned to navigate our differences. At 29, I was finally getting to know half of who I was. My relationship with my mother evolved too. The trust was broken, perhaps irreparably damaged, but we were building something new in its place, something based on truth rather than comfortable fictions. 6 months after discovering my father, I hosted a dinner at my apartment. My mother arrived first, helping me prepare the meal in tense silence. When Michael arrived, I watched them carefully navigate around each other, two people connected forever through me, yet separated by decades of hurt and deception. As we sat at my dining table, the three of us together for the first time in my memory, I raised my glass. To truth, I said simply. However painful, however late. My parents' eyes met briefly across the table before they raised their glasses in response. Later that night, after they had both left, I sat alone in my apartment thinking about identity and forgiveness. I had spent 29 years as the daughter of a ghost. Now I was learning to be the daughter of two flawed, real people. My mother had watched as I rebuilt my relationship with my father, not from the distance I had initially intended in my anger, but from the uncomfortable position of having to face her own failings. In making her witness our reunion, I had forced her to confront the consequences of her choices. The road ahead would be long. Trust, once shattered, doesn't mend easily. But as I looked at a new photograph on my mantel, one of my father and me sailing on Lake Michigan last month, I felt a completeness I had never known before. Sometimes the most painful truths make us more whole than the most comforting lies. At 29, I was finally learning who I really was, not the daughter of a fallen hero, but the daughter of Michael Donovan and Catherine Wells. Imperfect, complicated, real. And that truth, however belated, was worth more than any comforting fiction.